Hey everyone, so I recently got a Switch 2. Probably not a good idea on my part, but I am a gamer, tech nerd, and I'm considering on returning it or keeping it. So this video is going to be kind of my first impressions on what I think about it as coming from a Switch OLED. I've never used the regular Switch 1 without the OLED, so this is kind of, just keep that perspective in mind. I've also used this one pretty much quite a bit. Actually, I was going to show you something like my playtime on it. It's going to be on there, but on here, it is, I basically factory reset it so I can sell it. But yeah, there's a lot to talk about with the Switch 2 being a pretty different console. Well, not pretty different, but just like, entirely, the Switch 1's been out for at least 7 years. I forget exactly how long it is, but there's just a lot to talk about. So let's get into like obvious, I don't know, let's just get into what I think, who should maybe get it, who should maybe not get it, and just kind of my opinion overall. So if you don't have a Switch at all, it's a very expensive purchase, but it's not too bad. But you also want to keep in mind for people who have never bought a Switch, the problem with one thing I hesitate to recommend a Switch to people is because you also have to buy the games. And if you know anything about the current market right now, most of the games are not going to be on Nintendo first party games especially are going to barely be on sale, and they also increase their price to $70, sometimes $80 for some of their games. And I don't know if you've ever kept up with some of the scummy practices. There's a lot of controversy surrounding the Switch 2, including hiring the prices, making you pay for upgrades if you have a Switch 1 version, which is just stupid in my opinion. The Switch dock also has like the Switch 2 can only dock with the Switch the dock 2, the new dock, and there's so many things that just kind of upsetting, mostly about Nintendo. But let's get that aside for now. Personally, I'm not a fan of those things, and those really bother me. But with that aside, it's still worth buying a Switch 2. So let's see. Like I said, if I think you're kind of honestly going with a lot of money, like I said, with the Switch 2, and it just depends, especially about like what kind of gamer you are, obviously, how much money you have, you know what I mean? For example, if you're a budget gamer and you want like one handheld console, I'll be honest, the Switch 2 is not a great deal, because if you're buying games like if you want to play games like even like Cyberpunk 2077 is on here, everything, it's just not going to go on sale. If you buy it on Steam on PC right now, you can buy that for like $20, and on here, full $70, by the way. It costs even more than it's just insane. So I think if you're a person on a budget, this is not the console for you. It's just it's just so many like compromises you have to make in terms of, I think you're definitely paying a premium here, but the reason why you might want to Switch 2 is because you love Nintendo games, because you can't get them anywhere else. That's just how it is. Also, I would recommend the Switch 2 a lot more if you like single player games. There is co-op games, but a lot of the single player titles like Metroid Prime, what else? I can forget. I totally just blanked out. Breath of the Wild, Legend of Zelda, there's a lot of games. Obviously they have party games as well, but for single player games, there's Donkey Kong Bonanza is, mostly single player, like a lot of those games. They also have party games as well though, so which is why I kind of got it, because I like that aspect about it. Like there's all these other games, but for the most part, it's a lot of single player games for in terms of the games that actually matter that's exclusive to Nintendo. There's obviously other exclusives like Mario Kart and then Mario Party, but for the most part, everything else can be bought either on a different console like PC, especially for different prices, or the only the one thing that nothing else has that Nintendo has is Nintendo exclusives. And most of Nintendo's big name things are going to be some of their party games like Smash, like I said, the Mario Party and whatnot. But most of them are also going to be like Super Mario Odyssey, Metroid Prime, a lot of these single player games. So unless you really like some of these games, because to me, these games, the multiplayer games, are more of a supplement, if anything, unless you get addicted to one of these games. Like for example, I actually have a lot of hours on Super Smash Brothers. This is one game that kind of kept the console alive for me. But if it weren't for that, a lot of these like don't have that much hours, at least in relativity. If you look at my Steam profile and whatnot, it's just not that particularly great. But yeah, if you're the type of guy that's willing to play, like if obviously it's everyone's different. Look at your interest, and if you want to play Mario Kart and you want to play Smash, buy the Switch 2. You know what I mean? But if you're unsure, and I think if you're unsure about it, or if it looked kind of meh, you're thinking about it, you're on the fence about it, I don't know if I can particularly recommend it. It's not a terrible console or anything. It's just, yeah. So yeah, that's gonna be kind of my general opinion. Obviously, it depends on who you are, what games you play, stuff like that. But you do pay a very big premium. So let's talk about the Switch 1 versus the Switch 2. The biggest difference that I've noticed in terms of my use of just upgrading, kind of how I feel, is the performance. The Nintendo Switch 1 was out of date when it released. Its hardware was always really weak, including when it released, and so for them to go so much better, it's so easy to. It's hard to mess it up, because when your performance is this bad, like the Switch was still able to run games like Fortnite technically on the Switch 1, like technically, and it could run, I mean, it probably could run Cyberpunk, but like not very well, but it technically could, which was impressive. But it was basically at an extremely compromised and laggy like frame rate. There were so many things that just wouldn't recommend it unless it was your only option, and even then it was kind of sad. But yeah, it's an old console. But even then, even before, it was a lot of things, just, you know. So the Switch 1, in my opinion, is really only a good deal if you buy it used right now, because there's a lot of used people trying to sell theirs, like mine, I mean. And it's not terrible. I mean, it does. I think what the Switch 1 does great is it still plays stuff like Smash Brothers. You know, it plays Mario Kart 8, not World. It plays other like games, maybe not Pokemon Legends Arceus, but a lot of the first party games relatively well. Like the difference, I haven't noticed a difference between Smash Brothers Ultimate on here versus here. I've noticed Breath of the Wild differences, but there's some games, basically what I'm saying is, that are not very demanding. Like Mario Kart 8, I think I've also tested on both. I don't remember particularly, but there's other games that basically feel the same. You also technically have something like Ring Fit Adventure, which is a Switch 1 exclusive, because I think you literally can't put the new controller on it. But yeah, but most games are going to be way better on the Switch 2, performance-wise and graphically-wise. But yeah, so how do I feel about the upgrade so far? Like I said, the performance is the biggest difference. It genuinely feels like I can actually play most of these games now. Like Breath of the Wild was kind of meh. It was okay. Pokemon Scarlet, I don't like the game, but when I remember playing it, it was kind of depressing. And now at least it functions, which is kind of sad to say, honestly. Also, big rant aside, Pokemon has gone downhill. I'm not going to talk about that anymore. But basically, I wouldn't recommend it. Pokemon games, they kind of suck now. They really haven't changed. Anyways. Besides that, like I said, I was actually able to play Minecraft, and it looked pretty decent too, or it felt pretty decent. I'm confident enough where I could play Rocket League at not a horrible, at Fortnite, it didn't look particularly amazing, but it was more than playable. Well, on the Switch 1, it was like only if you're desperate, you know what I mean? Like, that's it. But the Switch 2, at least, yeah. So in my opinion, that is the biggest kind of vertical in terms of why you might want to switch to. For me, if I'm a Switch 1, Switch 2, the performance it makes it so much more well-rounded because you can do more things on it. Like I wouldn't recommend you play Minecraft on the Switch 1. You can. I wouldn't recommend it. It's kind of laggy. Same thing with a lot of other games, except obviously simple ones like Super Mario Party, Smash Ultimate, a few other games like that. But the performance is just so much better, and that's a low bar to clear because the Switch 1 was bad. Anyways, let's talk about, let's see, what else did I've noticed about the Switch 2? The biggest one was easily, obviously, the performance. Easily, not even a question about it. Other changes, let's see. They've obviously changed things like the Joy-Cons being completely different in terms of their attaching mechanism. This is how they detach, kind of like that. There's a little button right here, and it basically magnetically attaches. Well, the Switch 1, you have to pull off like a rail system like here. They also different controls as well, but for the most part, they're similar, with the Switch 2 being just bigger in general. And Yeah, the biggest difference on the Joy-Cons though is the shoulder buttons, which feels so much better on if you ever want to use it for like playing Smash like this. This feels 10 times better. It's still not great. It's a Joy-Con, but at least it's better than this. Where like this, like in Smash Ultimate, I jumped with my shoulder button. So imagine me doing this. I did this for short hopping, and like it was just not fun. You can, but like it's just, you know what I mean. Well, with this, at the very least, it actually felt okay. So that's a little bit of an upgrade. And the attachment mechanism is, I do prefer it. I do much prefer it over, it does feel secure. One thing that's really weird, if you notice, that it has a little bit of wobble if you like do this, because it's just the way it is, but I'm not worried about it, but that is something to keep note of, is there is noticeable wobble if you like kind of wiggle it, you know. But yeah. So the form factor is obviously going to be different as well. It's bigger. One thing I actually noticed when I went back to my Switch One, not really went back, just felt my Switch One in my hand, was how much I actually really like the portability of the Switch One, how nice it feels. It feels so nice. And I thought I wouldn't mind it that much. I thought, you know, Switch 2, I'm used to an ROG Ally, which is basically even bigger. And I'd be like, oh, you know, like this is fine. It says bigger batteries, a nicer screen, or not nicer screen, bigger screen, you know what I mean, bigger controllers. But to be honest, when I hold the Switch 2 and I go back to the Switch 1, it feels like there's some magic that's been lost. There's something so magical about this being like DS, I suppose, DS handheld. While this one feels like a more like a PC handheld. And the DS handheld, this small form factor, is just something so magical. I'm not saying it's worth it over it. I do think I would prefer the performance that you get with like a bigger one, or just some of the upgrades. But there's just something so magical about the feel of this tiny console, I suppose, something like this. And it's just easier to play on, like without really, you know, it's the Switch 2 is a little bit more for fatiguing to hold, so it's just, you know, more playable, more, you know, like that. So that's something I've noticed as well in terms of physicality. But in terms of the Switch 2 itself, like, I don't know, like I said, going back to why would you buy a Switch 2 and would I recommend it? Honestly, the hugest factor to me is performance, without a doubt. Obviously, there are also some Switch 2 exclusive games like Mario Kart World, and I think that's totally everyone else of what you like to play. For example, I'm not a huge fan of most Nintendo exclusives. Smash Ultimate is probably my favorite. Mario Kart World has been okay to me, but nothing so fantastic, you know what I mean? Like nothing that, I don't know, just, you know, I like Mario Party too, but like, I don't know if I would buy it for like the 70, but you know what I mean? Like it, but those are only games you can get on here. One thing that I'd really like to see about the Switch 2, and I'm sorry if I'm like kind of bouncing all over the place. This is just supposed to be an impromptu, kind of like my impressions, is I really wish it misses out on the experience you might get on a PC handheld. And that's what I'm saying is, for example, one, sales. You can't, if you want Jackbox Party Pack on the Switch 2, you have to pay full price, or at the very least close to full price. Sometimes it's still somewhere, but you know what I mean, for the most part. And what sucks is if you buy something on your PC handheld or your PC, you don't have it on here, so you would have to buy it twice. So what sucks is sometimes I'll have Jackbox and I want to play with like family, friends, whatever, and I just have to use my ROG Ally, which is fine. But what I would love to do is have it on here, because it's easier to dock, it's easier to manually like to do it. But I don't have it. I have to buy it again, and at full price at that. So that's just, you know, obviously that's just, you know, if you're a PC gamer at all, that's something to keep note of. That really sucks, I think. But that depends on you. Like some people like to separate their games entirely, like, you know, like the Switch 2 is for Nintendo games only, you know what I mean? Then some people get that. But there are some games that I would like to take on portable or handheld that I've played. Like example, I've been playing a game called The Ring of Pain on my ROG Ally, and it's fun, I love it, but it's also available on the Switch too. But I would have to buy it for $30, and I think I got it for free on PC because it was free on Epic, and I think there's a discount right now too, even if you buy on Humble Bundle. So there's just, but like if you want to buy it here, it's like $30. So that's a really big drawback, but like I said, that really is coming from, or $20, sorry, that really is coming from a perspective of a PC gamer. You know, obviously everyone's not a PC gamer, so I would like to, you know, I mean, no, I would like to just keep that in mind. What else is there to talk about? Let's see. I think those are the biggest things for me currently when it comes to, you know, when you upgrade. Um, I don't think it's really worth it for me, but I might keep it just because I'm a nerd and I think I'll want to switch anyways. I might wait. Another big problem is the LCD screen. It looks good, but the motion blur sucks. I've seen videos where it was really bad, and I thought like, oh, it's probably bad, but I wouldn't notice it. But it's noticeably bad. Like when I play it, I'm like, dang, that's actually kind of blurry. That kind of sucks. But then again, I've been using the OLED, so if you come with the regular one, it might be a little bit better. But the OLED was just so much better. So it actually does feel like a downgrade in terms of the screen, which kind of sucks. So when they eventually release the OLED version of the Switch 2, that might be another moment to get that instead. But yeah, for me personally, what I might do is I might end up returning this, then just buying the OLED version when that finally comes out. I don't know. It's a very expensive console, like I said, though. So this is more of a console for a premium that you're paying for. Yeah. One thing that about the Switch 2 that I haven't really talked about that's really what makes the Switch 2 special is this easy. Nintendo is kind of like the Apple of the world, of the gaming world. It's a lot more simple and streamlined. So you put this in a dock, you launch the game, it works. On an ROG Ally, sometimes like you play on Windows, you have issues, you can't plug a controller that easily. It's just not the same in terms of how that works, in terms of how easy it is to get it like functioning and whatever. So that's one of the things. I think if you're a normie as well, if you're a normie type of gamer or whatever, then that's something I value that, but at least I'm more willing to tinker usually. But if you don't want to deal with that hassle, you are paying for the brand tax, but you are definitely getting it at you are definitely getting that experience. So that's something I actually might recommend to a normie, but the problem is you're paying more price for it. So if you're not the type of person, if you're okay with paying full price for games, you like some of this stuff, like if you're the type to buy an iPhone and like have never used an Android and still want to buy an Apple iPhone, then I think the Switch is more likely for you, just because the type of demographics kind of overlap. Not exactly 100%, obviously, and there's some people, you know what I mean, but basically that. I think Apple and Nintendo are kind of similar in that regard in terms of like they're for the mass market, they're expensive, but they kind of just work and they are relatively good still, you know. So if you're a tinkerer, whatever, enthusiast, it's hard to recommend the Nintendo Switch 2 because, oh yeah, there's also another controversy. If you mod it in some way, or I think even try to repair it, I don't know exactly, but basically they can brick your console. They can say you're banned, which is kind of insane. After you bought a console, you basically can't. Like, that's stupid. Like, imagine trying to add a mod to a game and then your entire console's dead. You have to buy an entire new one or something. Like your account's like, that's insane. You know what I mean? So like, God forbid you tried to change anything about it. You just, yeah. So definitely, if you're a tinkerer, like a heavy tinkerer, Switch 2 might not be it. There might be some vulnerabilities like the Switch 1 has, and but you know what I mean? It's a little hard to recommend. It's not as easy, and it's a lot more risky, basically. So yeah, what else is there to say about the Switch 2 but maybe like difference between Switch 1? The experience overall just kind of does feel better, except the screen. One thing I do like is the joysticks are a lot more smoother, though the problem is they are very regular. They're not Hall effect, and they're practically identical, I think, in terms of how they're made. So they might be prone to stick drift again. I've never had a problem with stick drift, but many people have. So I think that's a missed opportunity right there to really just change it. I don't see why not. Like, it's just kind of the inferior technology, it feels like. I don't know. I'm not Nintendo. Maybe they did it for a reason. But overall, the experience is nice. Has a much better kickstand on the back. Overall, it just kind of feels like a better, just a more refined Switch, I suppose. Sorry, I'm holding it like kind of weirdly because the screen is so reflective, it will face reveal me the moment I do this or something. So I've been trying to purposely hold it like this for a reason. Anyways, like, here's what I mean in terms of refinement. this mounting mechanism versus this, it just feels more right. I've actually had issues on my Switch 1 now where it's like, it's just like there's issues with this. I don't know if these will have issues either, but what I'm saying is it just feels better. It feels more modern, you know what I mean? Though the Switch 1 is still, you know, not too bad by any means. In fact, it's very interesting and unique for what it is, and I love it for that. But yeah, all right, let's see. I think that overall, my opinion's gonna stay. Oh yeah, everything just feels. What's so sad is I can close the game that fast, like a launch game that fast. And I'm like, oh, that feels so much better. Because on here, sometimes you just have to wait, dude. It's so slow. It's just it's fine, but it's like the responsiveness is so much better. I remember watching a video where he was saying like, oh, the eShop is so nice. It just kind of loads and like I can look around, everything looks fine. And it's so sad that that's one thing to praise or like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, that's so nice about. But I mean, it kind of is true. If you've ever used this eShop on the Switch 1, it is embarrassingly slow. It is lagging like crazy. And even now, I wouldn't say it's perfect on the Switch 2. It still doesn't feel particularly crazy fast. It just, you know, much better. But on the Switch 1, it was embarrassingly slow. And like, it was just sad. And I don't understand. Like, you can see how there's still some stutter right there a little bit. It's just not perfect. It's okay, but it's not perfect. But yeah, I remember someone talking about that. Yeah. Oh, also keep in mind when you're playing the Switch 2 and you want to buy online, you do have to buy the if you want to play online, you will have to buy their subscription services. If you do a family plan and get other people, it's super cheap. But basically, if you're buying it yourself or you don't want to go through that trouble and you want to buy it, it is going to cost money. It's not a super obscene amount of money, but it's still just a cost you wouldn't need on PC. Like I said, I think it's very much comparable to Apple in this instance, in terms of like you're paying for it, you know, kind of just works, and whatnot. Like you're paying that extra subscription fee, you know, stuff like that, but it kind of just works for the most part. In general, I'm just saying you're basically paying for that. So if you want that freedom, the fact that you have to pay to play online is a little sad. I suppose, I don't know, just if you've ever especially played with PCs, it's just, you know what I mean? It's just, yeah. But that's just something you might have to do. Also, same thing with their games, is their games are mostly going digital. There's a whole conversation about that, but basically most of their games, or a lot of games right now, are being sold mostly only digital, or like you get whatever key. I'm not really sure how that works, but keep in mind that resaleability, I suppose, you know, whatever. I don't think most people who want the Switch 2 their whole deal is, but basically what I'm saying is, if you buy digital, you can't sell it again. So it can be a huge money sink. If you buy a few games, you don't even like them that much, or you don't, you know what I mean? You can't sell them. Maybe some physical ones, but basically it's just not, it's an expensive console is kind of what I'm saying. If money isn't an issue for you though, if money is not an issue for you, like much at all, or like, you know, you can afford it, the Switch 2 is a very fun console. There's still a lot to like about it. So yeah, the type of person I'd recommend the Switch 2 is either somebody who just wants it to work and wants to play games, and they're willing to pay that brand expensive tax, or just the type of person who has a lot of money anyways and just you know, wants one. If you want one, you buy one. You know what I mean? It's not bad. It's not a bad product by any means, but the value proposition is something I would consider, like mostly why I'd hesitate to offer the Switch 2 to everyone is because of that value. Basically, it's a lot of money. The games are very expensive, and it's not so amazing where I'd be like recommend to anyone. You know, it has a lot of limitations. You know, it doesn't have the same storefronts, so you can only play on games on the eShop, and even then you have to pay full price for a lot of the games. There's a lot of limitations, but what you get for it is you get the Nintendo experience. That is Nintendo exclusive games. You get the experience of it just working. Put on a dock, you can give this to your friend. Now you can play 2 games like this. You know, that's just something you can't really do on PC, you know, or at least not as simple and not as easily. And so that's just something that, like, that kind of about the Nintendo magic, you know. It's not being propped up right now. That's why it's kind of difficult. There you go. But yeah, that's going to be my Switch 2 first impressions currently. I've been using it for like only about a week right now, and that's just kind of how I feel so far about the Switch 2. Overall, I'm really sad they didn't release it in OLED at first, because if this was the OLED, if this had OLED, then it's a good screen, and maybe I would just keep it, because the Switch 2 probably has a long lifespan ahead of it, just like the Switch 1 does, right? But the problem is it's not. And so like I might not play it for a while, or like, you know what I mean? Like I'm just so sad. Like this screen is terrible. Like it's just, you know, it's not, it looks okay, but movement, and that's like everything in the game, is it looks blurry, and it just kind of sucks. So that's just really one thing I'm disappointed in. But who knows? I think it also, for me at least, it depends if I can sell my Switch 1 at a decent price, or at least okay price, because Switches right now are really cheap actually. You can buy really good cheap prices for a Switch and whatnot. So that's going to matter too. But mostly because I'm a tech nerd and I like games. I like gaming, you know, it's just something fun to look at and everything. So yeah, that's going to be kind of my assessment so far. Maybe I'll make a review video if you guys want to see a full review of the Switch 2 overall, given after some time. I don't know. Feel free to like and sub, but that's still up to you whether you do or not. If you have any questions at all, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. But other than that, I think that's going to be my video. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later. Peace.